I previously covered the giant characters in fighting games, but now it's time to go the other direction. What about the short characters? While the big guys tower over the opponent and naturally have longer reach or higher damage output, they usually have the trade-off of being a bigger target to hit and potentially having slower movement. The smaller characters, though, have the advantage of being harder to hit, with some attacks whiffing against them that would hit most other characters, and generally have speed or sneaky tricks on their side. They usually have the trade-off of having a shorter reach compared to other characters without the help from special items, and sometimes have less health overall, but with the right tools in-game and in the right hands out-of-game, they can take advantage of their smaller stature to the fullest and dash around the stage dodging attacks with ease. I'll be going over some of the iconic and obscure small fighting game characters. Sizes may vary, also one character per series of origin. In addition, a lot of the characters that I'm picking tend to have origins outside of fighting games. Just an observation, not sure if there's a point to that note. Now let's stack up the top 10 short characters in fighting games. Number 10, Mika from Under Night In-Birth. Under Night is a game where there's not too much of a size differential between characters, but the gap between the large and small characters is still noticeable. There are 3 characters that would fall into the short category, with heights under 5 feet, around 140 centimeters, being Batista, Line, and Mika. Batista always felt taller to me since she has the long energy wings, so it was between Line and Mika for this entry, but I ultimately went with Mika since she was the most chaotic. She's also the most inexperienced of them, since Batista and Line are both over 500 years old, so they carry themselves as seasoned fighters, while Mika is merely a fraction of their age, being an actual human teenager who's not some immortal being. Mika is part of an organization that investigates and potentially hunts the demons of this world called voids. While many characters have a history with these voids, usually leading to a backstory of either revenge or alliance, Mika doesn't seem to care much about them. She's just here to support her friend Ori, who's fighting against the voids, and thanks to Ori's organization, Mika gets a destructive pair of giant metal gauntlets. I love how they just told this energetic character to go around and punch people with huge fists. Mika's playstyle follows the general game plan of a lot of characters that we'll see on this list, where she's fast with both her mobility and attacks, in exchange for having a somewhat weaker damage output and shorter range on her physical attacks due to her smaller limbs. But as mentioned, she makes up for her reach with her speed. She can zip all over the stage as if she's flying. Besides being able to launch herself diagonally with her gauntlets, she can keep herself airborne by just punching rapidly for a bit, along with taking flight by spinning her arms as if she was a helicopter. She even has some strong grappling abilities with the gauntlets that let her grab her opponent with some unexpected strength. Her non-physical attacks from the gauntlets can shoot unspecified pink energy, which also propels her forward for some of these attacks that almost let her fly. However, sometimes she just stays airborne from her sheer eagerness to fight. She always has a smile on her face when on the offensive, and in a game where a lot of characters are serious and dramatic, we could use a bit of Mika's excitement to lighten up the mood. Mika. Number 9, Toro and Kuro in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. I mentioned them in my questionable guest character video, where they weren't the main entry, but they certainly were strange inclusions. They were mascots for Sony in Japan, usually presenting PlayStation stuff, and Sony negotiated to have their cat mascots as guests in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. I'm not sure why they felt that this game of all games had to have the unrelated crossover cats. It was already a big event that the Street Fighter and Tekken universes were colliding, so they didn't need to take attention away from that. But I'm assuming Capcom was fine with having the cartoon humanoid cats in a spin-off rather than a main series Street Fighter game, so they allowed it. Both Street Fighter and Tekken don't particularly follow realism, but there's generally a rule that most characters are built like humans, or are horrifying monsters if they're bosses, also a bear. They managed to bring the cats back to the titular Street Fighter Cross Tekken motif by having Toro mimic Ryu's moveset from Street Fighter Fighter, and Kuro use Kazuya's from Tekken. Their attacks are one-for-one recreations of what Ryu and Kazuya would do respectively, with the same inputs and all. The main difference, they're both less than half the height of the rest of the cast, even though the attacks can be blocked the same way, with the cats being a fraction of the human character's heights. Those attacks just go under any normal attacks naturally. By that, I mean attacks like projectiles or Tatsumakis don't collide with similar attacks like they would with characters around the same height. Instead, those moves just slip under incoming attacks when done by the cats, and moves flat out don't hit them because of their height. However, moves that are normally overhead when done by the human characters, like Ryu's collarbone breaker, still hit overhead when the cats use them, even if the overhead attack that says it hits the collarbone actually just makes contact with your shin. And despite being tricky to hit, these cats have significantly less health than the other characters in the game, meaning a couple of combos or just some clean hits with special moves take them down easily. They need to rely on their moves that have surprising reach to survive, though no one really played these guys outside of a quick goof, so it's nothing to worry about. And if you want a fun story showing how these cats got in the game, you won't get it here. Not only don't they have an arcade mode story, but you can't even select them in the arcade mode. The closest we got was Toro's other fighting game appearance in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, Sony's own Smash Bros., where we learn that he's a cat who wants to be a human, living out his dreams of fighting his video game heroes, which is why he fights with moves from other fighting game characters. In PlayStation All-Stars, Toro has 3 stances that imitate other fighting games, one for moves from Street Fighter, another for Tekken, and the last for Mortal Kombat. So that explains why him and Kuro use moves from the games from the main characters in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. They're just being fanboys imitating their fictional heroes. And if I existed in a fighting game world where I could make up any fighting style imaginable, my first instinct would also be to imitate one of my fighting game mains, except I'm not doing Melina's leaping neck bite, so I can understand Toro and Kuro's line of reasoning. Number 8. Sailor Chibi Moon in the Sailor Moon S fighting game. This is a solid mid-90s Super Famicom fighting game, which there were a lot of, so it's good to stand out. It still has a niche following today, and it involves all the Sailor Moon main characters duking it out because, I don't know, they have a lot of moves and the developer liked fighting games? I wish there were a few villains on the roster for the sake of variety, since otherwise it's just the Sailor Guardian training matches simulator. I don't know why they would always be fighting, but ignoring the story implications, there's plenty of references from the series in their movesets to make this a fun experience for fans, along with just being a solid fighting game. Most of the characters are around the same height, with one outlier, Chibi Moon. With her being the elementary schooler of the group, she's expectedly shorter, and they gave her different mechanics to go with her size. My favorite thing about her is her backdash. All characters in the game can do a cool backdash move to avoid attacks when timed properly, but Chibi Moon is the only character who can continuously cancel her backdash into another backdash. This means she can theoretically be invincible forever when on defense because she's constantly backdashing, thereby avoiding every attack. You still gotta time it properly though. She's also the only character with a double jump, making her hard to catch in the air. In addition, her air mobility can be altered with her swinging marshmallow attack, where she propels herself backwards to be a real menace when airborne. And this attack knocks down the opponent if it makes contact, so it's good for both defense and offense. However, as with many characters on this list, her speed and movement have the trade-off of low damage and short reach. She's got her heart projectiles for the long game, but up close, she doesn't have the limbs of her teammates, though she still has the advantage that they need to change their strategy up close. You gotta crouch to meet her at her level. Overall, Chibi Moon may struggle with her basic attacks in the game, but she definitely has enough tools to make her annoying in combat. Number 7. Chomple from Samurai Showdown. In my giant character video, I mentioned how the roster of Samurai Showdown got pretty weird by the 6th game. Characters like Kusarigado and the Karakuri Puppet were strange designs that still worked in a fighting game. But on the opposite end of that, you had the Animal Fighters, who were background characters in previous games that just walked alongside their masters and would join in for assist attacks. Chomple was more just there for show, being the companion of the archer Mina. She found him in the ruins of a village and took him in because he had no home, and now he poses with her to be cute. But with Samurai Showdown 6 being the everyone is here roster, they separated the animal companions from their owners to make them all playable. While some of the animals could conceivably be fighters like the wolf or chimpanzee, Chomple looks like something that can't even throw a punch. Like, how does he attack with those tiny limbs and unassuming face? He runs away anytime Mina gets hit. And what even is he? He's classified as an animal for the sake of simplification, but he's technically a demon. So his demon powers are, this energy arrow thing. They just reuse his animations when he imitates Mina during her attacks, and they make the most out of him just flailing around. This is a weapon-based fighting game, don't you need something more durable? Well, he does take this leaf out to hit the opponent, so I suppose that could be considered his weapon, which means he's kind of like a tanuki. He also excels at jumps. His jumping height is about as tall as the average human fighter, so if anything, he's hard to pin down when he moves around. Despite all this, he can unlock his true potential. He has a super move where he reveals his real form as a bigger quadrupedal demon that just slashes the opponent for all the damage. For the real twist, this is also the demon that destroyed the village that Mina found Chomple in. In her arcade mode ending in Samurai Showdown 5, it shows her having to put Chomple down after learning this, but since he was back in the game after, maybe that means that she could tame him to use his powers for good, or one of these is non-canon, but I like the scenario where Chomple gets to live and be a big demon without consequences. Number 6. Umbrella from Skullgirls. Umbrella goes against the grain when it comes to small characters. She's not fast. She has slow, heavy movements because she's carrying her giant living umbrella named Hungern, which takes a lot of strength to use and enables some unique strategies for her. Hungern produces a lot of liquid on his quest for food, and by liquid I mean spit. It gives Umbrella extra range and helps her set up traps. He blows bubbles that can interrupt and encase the opponent or leave puddles for splash damage and hazards. His tongue is also a problem, spitting projectiles everywhere and just adding to the range of all of Umbrella's swings and spins. And if you hate the spit coming out of his mouth, then you'll despise his other attacking method. He bites you. He just puts the opponent in his mouth and chews for a bit. However, all these attacks change depending on how Hungern is feeling. Hungern constantly needs to eat. If he doesn't eat, their moves have different properties. If he's very hungry, in his ravenous state, you're at your fastest, since he wants to get that food quickly, being the opponent, and his throws where he eats become stronger. But if he's too hungry, where he's withering away in his starving state, all your stats go down. Less speed, some attacks are unavailable, it's just a mess, but his eating throws are still stronger. On the other end of that, if he eats too much, he gets overstuffed, and many of your attacks get stronger, both the standard hits and the special ones, like the bubbles. But there's a trade-off, where Umbrella becomes slower because she has a bigger load to carry, and any of Hungern's eating attacks do less damage because he couldn't eat another bite. There's also Default Hungern, who's neither hungry nor full, he's just chillin'. As for the main character of this entry, Umbrella is necessary to make all these attacks go off. She may only be 11 years old, but she knows how to pilot her weapon. Her size allows her to low-profile her opponent and then just hit them for big damage. The benefit of her being slower than the other small characters on this list is she brings the pain in only a couple of hits. Also, her design is based on the Morton Salt Girl, a mascot for a salt brand that's been around for over 100 years. The yellow outfit, the way she carries her umbrella, the theme of it raining around her. I never thought I would need to see the Morton Salt mascot in a fighting game, but Skullgirls definitely makes me think that that's one product mascot with some untapped potential.
You're in time! I love you, Hungern!
Number 5. Iggy in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Heritage for the Future. Iggy is a deceivingly small character, as in he's just a tiny dog, but because this is the JoJo's universe, you always have to worry about a second fighter popping up, being the stands. Nearly every character in the game can summon their stand, and if you've never seen or read JoJo's, that's essentially another body that you can summon to fight for you, but if it gets hurt, you get hurt. So while Iggy is hard to hit on his own, where more moves miss against him than they do against anyone else, when he has his standout, known as the Fool, he becomes a wider target. You generally want to have your stand active in this game, so he usually doesn't benefit from being harder to hit very often unless his stand is broken, or you're a masochist who never summons the stand. But luckily, he's got another major trait of short characters that we've seen on this list, with his speed. So if you're without your stand for a brief period of time, he can run away quick or get in for a little damage if you just need to chip away at your opponent's health. The stand gives Iggy the power of sand manipulation, letting him throw a little sand at the opponent or use its giant paws to poke or grab the opponent with some decent range. The stand can also transform into a few mobility options, like a buggy or a glider, the latter of which makes him a menace in the air. And all while the Fool is doing his sand shenanigans, Iggy can hit him low. He's got a cool butt bounce, sand kick, and a slide, and I love the look on his face as he's doing the slide. He goes into a completely different art style for a second. Though Iggy's used to that. He looked completely different in his first appearance compared to his later appearances in the source material. The game even references his change in art style when Alessi uses his transformation super move against Iggy. So not only can he bend reality a bit with his sand abilities, but also with the way he looks. Number 4. Choi from the King of Fighters. It's hard to read Choi's personality. His backstory is that he used to be a murderer who killed at night, with a clear reference to Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street with his clawed glove, fedora, and striped shirt. Sounds like a pretty odious guy, but when we see him in the arcade modes, he's very goofy. Choi's almost always on Kim Kapwan's team, who is a Taekwondo practitioner who takes in criminals in an attempt to rehabilitate them, so he can hopefully use their power for good rather than evil. Choi plays along with Kim in hopes that he'll be free soon, but generally gets punished if he tries to do something tricky like escape, and it's usually a cartoony result, so it's hard for me to see this guy as a serious murderer. His moveset bolsters his silly nature, but still shows how he could be a creep who lurks in the night. His fighting style is all about him zipping through the air and using his claws. He can fly in all directions, turning himself into the deadly projectile, even adding a little spin to his rise and descent to make his landing hurt twice as hard. With his claws out, he'll cause some damage even if he just grazes you. He can also create mini tornadoes with his speed alone, so he's no joke, but he kinda feels like a joke when he loses since he flails around on the ground like a turtle who fell upside down, so once again, it's polarizing how serious of a threat he appears to be. To emphasize his moveset, his teammate Chang, who's another criminal stuck on Kim's team trying to escape, uses his slow but hard-hitting giant size to complement Choi's small and quick moves. They even act as a single duo character in Capcom vs SNK 2, where Chang takes the lead and Choi acts as a deadly assist with cunning speed. So whether he's got a partner or is fighting solo, Choi will always be the fastest guy on the field. Number 3. Rocket Raccoon in the Marvel vs. Capcom series. The Marvel vs. Capcom games have given us a fair amount of small characters. We've had Arthur, Beautiful Joe, Amaterasu, Roll, Servbot, but the character that stuck out the most to me was Rocket Raccoon, in part because he was the smallest of the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 cast. While the other short humans in that game had more cartoony features, mainly the big heads, Rocket was pretty close to Raccoon proportions. options. That being said, he's still a space raccoon with a gun, so we're not judging him based on realism, but the smaller head helps make him the shortest standing character at full height. What really makes me like him the best of the options in this game is how well he represents the speed and surprise of a small character. Besides being hard to hit, where some combos don't work against him, he's hard to catch. He can dash all over the screen with his rocket skates, going horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. And to mess with your timing, he can slow his descent by spinning his tail. But don't just worry about what he does in the sky, he can go underground too. He digs holes to go covert for a bit and then pops up somewhere else on the stage. Expectedly, he's fast overall, quickly running up to you to scratch your face a bit and then scurry away. Now that you got his movement down, it's time for the real gimmick of his playstyle, all the traps. He makes up for his short reach with all the traps that he can set around the stage. Pick your favorite. He places most of them on the ground, like the one that catches you in a net, or the one that bombards you with rocks, or the one that just lets off a bear trap. Also the giant spring trap, can't forget about that one. And the basic trap that makes the biggest impression to me is the log trap. It's just a pendulum that takes up most of the screen when released, and then it sends you flying to get hit with a combo. He also has a makeshift flame carpet with his oil bomb. One moment it's just an innocuous liquid hazard, and the next he can shoot it with his laser to create the fire. On that note, even without the traps, he's got artillery. He has bombs, lasers, bigger lasers, and his favorite, the Gatling gun. I love his intensity when he takes this out, saying, "Now let's rock and roll," as he does the move. My favorite memory of that move is when my friend was trying out Rocket Raccoon for the first time, and he took the gun out too late where it didn't combo with the moves he did before it, so he yelled, "Now let's drop a combo," as the move went off. I can't help but think of that line anytime I see this Super Moves animation.
Now let's rock and roll! Combo KO! You win! The raccoon's the king of the beasts. Screw the lion.
Number 2, GT Goku in Dragon Ball FighterZ. This is the fighting game version of Goku specifically from Dragon Ball GT, where, in the context of that series, after a poorly worded sentence in front of a wish-granting dragon, Goku is put in his kid body with his adult mind, but still has all of his same powers, just a bit weaker. So now we have a tiny version of Goku running around in the game, and without being weighed down by whatever weighs him down with his adult body, this fighter is faster than all the other Gokus in the game. He's got quick fists, flight, and fury, and he's expectedly harder to hit. He's noticeably shorter than other short characters, like Kid Buu, being half of his size. He also has a great mix-up game, which is annoying when combined with his speed. Even something like his Super Spirit Bomb, which is a giant projectile that takes up like half the screen, lets him move around almost right after he throws it, so the pressure game can be amazing. So what's the downside of using him over the other Gokus? Well, he's got short reach, which you could expect from a short character. However, he overcomes that by using his Nyoibo power pole to extend his reach, so now he has no weaknesses. Well, there are weaknesses, but he's got tools. The pole can extend full screen to whack the opponent. However, my favorite power pole attacks don't even have him extending it. I just like when he slams it down and when he spins it to reflect projectiles. However, despite this being GT Goku, he never uses his power pole in GT since he gave it up at the end of original Dragon Ball, but he used it all the time as Kid Goku in original Dragon Ball. So this character is sort of a hybrid of original Kid Goku with GT Goku, so we could have both characters to an extent. What's more interesting is that the specific version of young Goku that they're basing some of these moves off of is the version from Path to Power, which was a movie retelling of two sagas from the original Dragon Ball for the anime's 10-year anniversary in 1996, which uses GT's art style. So this is more GT art style Goku than just GT Goku. I think that's pretty cool. I don't have official confirmation on that, but I like to think that GT Goku's Kamehameha super move, where the energy circles around him before it accumulates in his hands, is based on his enraged Kamehameha in that movie after Android 8 is killed. It may be the coolest Kamehameha in the series. Path to Power is a great Dragon Ball movie, movie, check it out sometime. The other major reference to original Dragon Ball is his Dragon Fist super move mimics Goku's defeat of Piccolo Daimao, but that was also done with the Dragon Fist against Super 17 and GT as an homage to that kill, so that credit more goes to the anime writers than the game developers. Still, the developers knew it would be a good idea to put those moves in the game since they always bring the hype.
Time to end this! Dragon Fist explosion!
Can't be!
Honorable mentions. Farah from Mortal Kombat. Farah is a small warrior who rides on top of a massive dude named Tor, akin to Mad Max. She guides him and acts as a living weapon and projectile for him, but the character that takes all the damage is Tor, so Farah's size really only comes into play for aesthetics and hitboxes. Still, if there weren't so many great choices to choose from for this list, I may have bent the rules to put her on it. Adam in Injustice 2, similar to Farah Tor, on default, when you make contact with Adam, he's at the size of a standard character, but when you use his abilities that shrink him down to the size of an atom with full strength, he's impossible to hit and at his most fun. Don't you love just zipping around the stage as a dot? Pika Libre in Pokken. With Pokken being the premier Pokemon fighting game, they opted to go with a lot of the more human-sized Pokemon, or at least wider Pokemon if not humanoid, for the main roster. But since it's a Pokemon game, you still gotta have the mascot Pikachu, being the smallest selectable fighter, but there were two Pikachus on the roster, with the second Pikachu being Pika Libre. It's a luchador Pikachu! She does wrestling moves, how do you not love her? Gon in Tekken 3. Similar to Toro and Kuro, he's a cartoon animal guest in a game with mostly realistic human-sized characters, so he avoids attacks just by being himself. And Yoda in Soul Calibur 4. Okay, this one has a story to why he's not on the main list. I had him planned for the list, possibly even number 1, I even had a cool segment written about him. But then I learned that I don't have an easy way to capture footage of him in present day. Here's the history. Soul Calibur 4 initially had version-exclusive guests from Star Wars, with the PlayStation 3 version getting Darth Vader, and the Xbox 360 getting Yoda. I have the PlayStation 3 version, so Yoda didn't come with the version I got, but eventually they made each guest DLC for the version that they weren't in. However, I never bought Yoda, and when I went to purchase him to get B-roll for this video, I discovered that not only was the DLC for Soul Calibur 4 delisted back in 2017, but the entire game was gone digitally. If you search the game in the PlayStation Store, it just says disc only. While there's no official explanation on why this happened, most people speculate it's because Disney now owns Star Wars, so when the license ran out for Soul Calibur to use these characters, Disney had them pull it, and or Namco had no reason pursuing a renewal for a game that they were no longer supporting. The game came out in 2008 before the Disney Star Wars acquisition. So the only way to legally get Yoda in Soul Calibur now, besides getting the DLC in the past, is to get the Xbox 360 version on disc, since it was delisted on their digital store too, and still have an Xbox 360 working since the game is not backwards compatible with any other Xbox models. So with my friends and me not having that version of the game, and not having an Xbox 360 if we were to buy the game used, we don't have a way to capture the footage on our own, and we like having footage for an entry, so that's why Yoda is only an honorable mention. If you want someone to blame, I guess Disney? For number 1, I wanted the wackiest character. Not only is this character hard to hit, but they'll confuse you while you try to catch them. Number 1, Neko Arc from Melty Blood. Melty Blood has a storied past, spanning beyond fighting games, where you get a lot of drama solving a murder mystery, while one of the main characters, Arquaid, is looking for a cure for her vampirism that plagues her, giving her an occasional lust for blood. While the game still has plenty of wacky aspects to balance out all the seriousness, it's hard to get any crazier than with the reality-bending Neko Arc. You look at this roster and everyone appears to be humanoid for the most part, except this cartoon cat girl with different physiology than everyone else as if she belongs in a different game. However, the point of her is to be the oddball of the roster. She's what's known as a Neko spirit, who come from a land that exists beyond the reality of the game, specifically the Great Cat Village, which is a Schrodinger's puzzle since it's both everywhere and nowhere at once, as in, she's the meta character who can break the fourth wall. It's why her appearance is literally just arcade, but as a chibi cat girl. She knows how modern of a game she's in, what the mechanics are, and how long it's been since the last game that she's been in, so she's got all the knowledge that we do. She even knows how to live stream. And with her knowing that she's a video game character, that means that she can do whatever she wants with her powers. When she's just lazing about, she can manifest whatever is comedic to the situation, like a classy wine glass. But in battle, prepare for anything. Her downsides tend to be what we've seen on this list before, being short range with her physical attacks and lower health, with her most physical attacks probably being her rapid punches and shoryuken, and once she gets going, the paws keep flying. However, expectedly, she goes beyond physical combat. She has the mother of all eye lasers, which are huge, and she can spawn random items to help her in battle, like cans of tuna that gain meter. When I said that she could live stream, it's literally a move where she summons another Neko Arc to take the place of the streamer, and throws stat boosting items in the middle of the match. And that segues us to the biggest aspect of her character, all the other Neko Arcs that she can summon. With just a press of a button, she can summon anywhere from 1 to a dozen other tiny cat girls to help her in battle. And what can they do? Everything. Or nothing. Some of them just sit around and dig a hole, but the ones that do things make great stage hazards. You got the rocket girls, the punchy girls, the ones that form a makeshift train, the ones slowly dragging a tire, and one that isn't even a Neko Arc. My favorites though are the ones flying on these shadow cat things, because if you do nothing, they just act as a taunt where they dance at you cause they're goofy. But if either you or one of the other Neko Arcs that you summon hits them, they fall off and get angry by rushing at the opponent, which is where you get all the damage from them. I just love that they deliberately avoid hitting the opponent until provoked by their own team, though that's kinda mean. I thought their dance was funny. And let's not forget, Neko Arc is hard to hit on her own when the other cats aren't flying around. So for bringing the comic relief in the most bizarre of ways while being a nuisance to hit, Neko Arc tops this list of short fighting game characters.
メイドインマーズラストアークフィニッシュ私の負けですってウィニング
Now, what did you think? Did all these characters rise to the occasion, or did some of them come up short? Who would you have added to the list, and who were your favorites, whether I discussed them or not? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.